America is at a crossroad. Never before have we stumbled so spectacularly on the world stage as we have in recent years. The pandemic has brought many of our biggest issues to light. Homelessness and the mental health crisis have reached epidemic levels. Freedom of speech is under threat. Politics has never been more toxic, and corporate greed has reached heartbreaking levels. The climate crisis has brought a dramatic increase in natural disasters. Meanwhile, we stand on the threshold of artificial intelligence, which could serve as the best tool to help us deal with many of these challenges if we can keep the power out of the hands of a few. How do we deal with these many issues? By speaking radically, honestly about these challenges and their solutions. By becoming more enlightened to the facts and raising human consciousness, we can use this unprecedented moment in human history to create the most extraordinary advancement in our collective experience. I'm host Shaman Isis. Welcome to Citizen Journalist. Hi, and welcome to Citizen Journalist. I'm your host, Shaman Isis, and I am jacked today because I have somebody that I call a near and dear friend that I know quite well on the show today, Billy Dees, podcaster and media mogul in the making. How are you?
Oh, well, that's quite the intro. I am doing fantastic. Always a pleasure to be with you, Shaman. Thank you for bringing me on and giving me a chance to talk to your audience. Thank you.
Absolutely. So for the audience who doesn't know Billy yet, Billy has one of the most popular podcasts on Good Pods, is a quite popular on X, and has you're constantly doing powerhouse interviews. You want to share with me what you've been up to lately?
Well, yeah, I'm on X, which is formerly known as Twitter. It is now referred to as X. I'm at Billy Dees on there. And we're primarily, as far as the podcast goes, primarily interviews and commentary. And sometimes those two things overlap. Shaman comes on, we do commentary together. And those are on Thursday nights, and they happen to be live on X. And then, of course, they're on the podcast networks later. And I would say my most recent interview is with a young man named Holden. He is a Spaces host, and if you don't know what that is, it's basically on X, their audio forums where you have a host, maybe a co-host, any number of speakers, and the audience is, I'm going to say, almost unlimited. As many people can listen as you want. And he has had some very good spaces that I was listening to on behalf of RFK, who is Bobby Kennedy's son, the late Bobby Kennedy's son, who is also running for president this year. He is running independent from the duopoly. That's the word that Holden uses, which refers to the two-party system. So he's got a lot of people excited. A lot of people are excited. So we'll have to wait and see. Poll after poll is making him look better and better. I don't know if that's because he is a dynamic candidate, there's no question, but you have two very unpopular leading men on the Republican, on the Democratic side, and people are just getting tired of the anti-vote.
Yeah.
Obviously, Biden benefited very much from the anti-Trump vote. Trump in 2016 benefited from the anti-Hillary vote. So it's been a while since we had somebody, that people voted for.
Yeah.
And it's a good situation for an independent candidate this year. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I think he's ideal. Really quick before we get into that, because I really want to talk to you about, I always enjoy, if you guys are not on Spaces on X or watching lives on X, it's really become such a great forum for so many things, and I enjoy co-hosting Billy's podcast on Thursday nights live on X. So definitely go check that out. Holden, I caught your interview, and he was a very interesting young man, and he hosts some very popular spaces on X.
Yes.
And I'm a big fan of Spaces. I've met a lot of great people there. And he also interviewed RFK Jr., which, honestly, my intuition has been going off. I'll tell you a funny story. When I went to go to see him speak, And on my way there, and it was really weird because I'm not political in that way. I'm an activist, but for what I consider other social issues. And I went to go hear him speak. And on the way there, I happened to stop at a vintage store. And when I went in and walked up to a random rack and pulled the thing back, there was a T-shirt of the Kennedys there. And that was literally the thing that I landed on. And I was like, my intuition was like, synchronicities are very interesting. And I thought, this was about 3 or 4 months ago. So he was quite far off. And I was like, I'm feeling some things are going to happen. And it's gotten really interesting. Not only have the Democrats actually caused Trump to become more popular.
Yeah.
But now both Biden and Trump, who are really more being chosen for the parties they represent than their likability, are kind of like two candidates that everyone's like, really? I'd say everyone, the common folk, and RFK, really, I don't know. Do you agree? I think he stands a chance of actually being this dark horse that comes out of nowhere. And still, I have my intuition's telling me that it's going to get interesting. Would you agree?
The next 3 months are really going to be a pretty good indication. I can tell you that 6 months ago, I didn't think that Trump had much chance of winning. I kind of figured, I knew he was going to be nominated, but I didn't feel he had much chance of winning the general election. And also 6 months ago, I would have had to say that Kennedy was very much a long shot. Now that is completely changed. I would say that Trump right now has a very good chance of winning. As a matter of fact, he's probably, if you had to bet right now, is probably the leading candidate.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, I don't think that Kennedy is a long shot anymore. Whether or not he's likely to win, it can be debated. And here again, I think the next 90 days will be critical in determining that. But he is not a long shot anymore by any stretch of the imagination. With Trump's rise in the polls, his negative numbers have also gone up. Biden has suffered miserably. I read a statistic just before we got on here that he's at 40%. And at this point before the election, it's very rare that a presidential candidate wins the election with that low of an approval rating. So it's going to be it's going to be interesting. Now, whether or not the Democrats pull a stunt is another thing entirely. I don't know how this would work. I hear Michelle Obama coming up a lot. I have nothing against her, but here again, we've had a Bush dynasty, we've had a Clinton dynasty, and I don't know that those are really good. And here again, it's recycling the same people. I would really like to see somebody like Kennedy, who is completely different than anything we've had in the past 25 years.
Yeah. And I don't think the American people have ever been more primed for drastic change. And just to give a timeline of this. So we've got Biden coming in strong at the beginning of the year. Trump was considered a long shot. The Democrats and the very left-leaning media really went after Trump in unprecedented ways that I was like, this is setting a precedent for how our future presidents are going to be treated that nobody seems to really understand. And all they did, and I remember saying, we talked about this about 5 months ago, and I remember us talking about the fact that they were doing nothing but actually making him look like a martyr. Yeah. And so that caused the rise of Trump, while simultaneously the economy's been tanking, and the greed of corporate America and its desire to drive up costs of just the basic hierarchy of needs for the American people is combining with this, odd moment where the people have realized that Biden really is not doing well, and physically and mentally and probably spiritually. And then you've got Trump who's stayed calm enough for him to keep himself moving up. And then you've got Kennedy, who was really truly, like you said, a dark horse going back at the beginning of the election cycle year, if you will. And I remember us talking about right before he announced he was going to run an independent, and we said that was the key for him, because this is the dumbest thing the Democrats ever did. And we just revisit how stupid it was for the Democrats to not allow debate, to bury any of the other candidates from even being able to be in the running, and now they've lost someone that they could have actually slid into into that place and really had a good competition going on. And I think it's created this perfect storm between the economy and people just being fed up with the greed of corporate America and the cost of housing, the cost of food. And now you've got the Kennedy, who speaks to all of those things in a way that makes him very relatable to the average American. And now we've got a very interesting race, which we did not have a few months ago.
Yes. It could make history. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, it's interesting to say the least. And here again, if things keep eroding internationally the way they are for Biden, I don't know how he can win, especially considering he is appearing more and more feeble. And you and I have talked about this on my show, in that he should be, this is actually I'm sure shortening his life at this point. He should be on the back porch relaxing with a glass of tea and a lemon slice in there and just enjoying the breeze. He should not be running the country. He is noticeably coming unglued. And quite frankly, even Trump is not the same guy he was in 2016. No. He's not. No.
And with his track record, he tends to incinerate he'll rise and then he'll do something. Like sometimes those stupid things really work. The chaos he creates works, but a lot of times they cause him to go like, oh. Yeah.
Well, even in 2016, a lot of people, including myself, Glenn Beck was another one, was kind of speculating whether he even wanted to win the election. Yeah. Because he was doing so many crazy things. Mm-hmm. But he won in spite of that. So I just don't know. I just don't know.
I have to be honest, as I don't really care what people think. I voted for Trump back then because not because I felt like, but not because I'm a Republican, and not because I felt like he was going to be a great president, but because I was so gravely concerned about wokeism and how far things were going with liberal antics. Some of the things they're doing in our schools, like it's really shocking. And I'm quite liberal myself, but I did because I felt like we needed chaos to be introduced into politics to cause change.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and that could get him elected again, quite frankly, because some of what's going on now, I will never understand the tolerance we have for violent crime to begin with. But now, you have situations in some of these major cities where not only do prosecutors not prosecute people who are committing violent crimes, but they prosecute the victims for defending themselves. And what I'm talking about used to be, the script for a Dirty Harry movie. Back.
It's true though, yeah.
And the Dirty Harry would get mad and go out and even the score. But truth is now stranger than some of these scripts that are coming out of these movies. You actually have people, store owners, who are being prosecuted and sued for defending themselves, not against shoplifting, but from getting beaten in the face.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. And I don't even necessarily think that that's the police engineering that. I think a lot of that goes back to the whole woke agenda of not wanting to prosecute people for committing crimes. It's like they've turned and I'm a big believer that a lot of our jails are filled with people who've unhealed trauma, that got traumatized at a very young age, got thrown into a system that's quite sick in the way that it treats people, and then gets them even more addicted and messed up in the head, and then releases them on society and expects them to be okay.
Yeah.
But that whole woke agenda really did engineer a system where the victims became the criminals, and the criminals became the victims, and the victim mentality really caused a lot of, I think, mental health issues in America.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, our judicial system, the law enforcement, all these different aspects of what goes on. I'll tell you what the weakest link is. A lot of people think it's the jury system. There have been calls for professional juries, which I don't think necessarily would be a bad idea. A lot of people think it's the police and the way they investigate. And that's maybe part of it. But I'll tell you, without a doubt, in my opinion, the weakest link in the judicial system in the United States is the discretion in which district attorneys take on prosecution.
Yeah.
They can look the other way at a murder, and they can go after you because you spit on the sidewalk.
I think that's what happened with Epstein. I believe
it could be.
Originally, the reason he was able to go on for so many years is because the DA, and don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I haven't followed that close.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a lot of holes that he managed to fall through, but that's a whole nother topic. Yeah, but I got to tell you what happened in New York in Times Square with the police officers getting attacked, and then they let the guys go without bond. That's a perfect example
that would never happen. You know, I was laughing because I had to, just as a personal thing, I had to deal with the DMV, and they're asking me for evidence of things. It's like, you want me to bring in my divorce papers from 15 years ago for a name I've never actually legally used, and I'm standing next to a man who has no papers, no paperwork, no ID, and they're literally giving him an ID, and I was like, how does this actually work, where I'm getting penalized for being an American citizen?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
that's
what do you think?
Go ahead. That's the kind of stuff that's going to get Trump elected again. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. What do you think of? So two things. I wanted to touch on Nikki Haley, where she's at right now, and also who you think the ideal candidate for RFK Jr. as a vice president could be.
Sure. Nikki Haley right now, this is just a guess on my part. I have no inside information on this, but my guess is she's staying in the race for two reasons. Number one, she's still getting good donations. So this is going to be part of funds that are going to be used down the road. And as long as she's getting donations, why not stay in? There's also probably a part of her that feels that something could happen to Trump. Now, he's in better health than Biden, but at least that's the perception. But that's not saying a whole lot. He's of the age as well, where maintaining a schedule such as he is, something could happen to him, or he could end up having so many legal troubles he can't run. So Nikki Haley is kind of hanging out there to kind of remain a viable option. I kind of have gone on. There was a time when I was looking at her pretty favorably, but she's come up with some things that I didn't like. The registration for the internet and all this other kind of thing really turned me off on her. But that's a whole nother. In regard to RFK, the one that keeps coming up is Tulsi Gabbard, and I would much rather see her with RFK than I would Trump. I think she deserves somebody that is an honest. It appears to be an honest, different type of candidate. I would hate to see Tulsi get involved with Trump and then have some sort of another fiasco like with the vice president before. So I wouldn't want her stained in that way, not complying with some kind of a crazy idea that he has or something like that. I really think that she's better off. I kind of feel with Kennedy. That would be my kind of dream ticket there. But, who's to say? I kind of feel that I've heard Tulsi mentioned with Trump as well. I would probably have to say Vivek is probably the more likely person to go there. And here again, I think Trump's chances of winning with Vivek on the ticket is very good because obviously he's ahead in the polls by a long shot as it is. Even against Biden now, most areas have him pulling ahead. And Vivek is just an absolute attack dog when it comes to debating. He will chew up Kamala and spit her out. It would actually be fun to watch. Yeah.
That's a sick part of me, but it would be like, God, I just want to see this. But it would probably be like a Doberman picking on a Chihuahua.
Yeah. He's got a command of the English. He's got a command of the facts, and he knows the angles to work his point in. Even if I knew I was right about something, to debate him would be very difficult. He is that good.
Oh, he's good. Yeah, I think I don't know a lot about Tulsi. I'll be honest, and that actually makes me kind of because usually I'm aware of the sort of essence, if you will, of a person. So she's managed to stay pretty below the radar. I think Vivek is interesting. I do think it's almost too much because he and RFK both have that sort of like parallels in their understanding of just how much BS is going on in politics. So it's like he needs that kind of like diversity. I don't want to see us pick a woman simply because we all, most everybody, particularly women, would really love to see a female president, but I don't want to have candidates forced into positions simply because of their sex either.
Yeah. No, she doesn't strike me as that. The woman from Alaska, her name's escaping me at the moment.
Sarah Palin.
Sarah Palin. She was clearly picked for that reason.
Oh my God, that lipstick on a pig was one of the best moments ever.
She gave a great speech at the Republican convention that year. As a matter of fact, I was kind of wondering if that wasn't going to win the election, but as time went on, and if you know the story behind this, in her book Going Rogue, she should not have gone rogue. She should have listened to the handlers, because she continually got herself in situations where she didn't know what she was talking about.
Yeah. And we weren't very accepting back then either of politicians saying, you know, actually, let me look into that and I'll get back to you. Yeah,
well, she didn't even say that. She tried to muff her way through some things.
Oh, yeah.
And Tulsi is, she's very capable. She's very capable. And she's got the look. She's got this, there was a picture of her going around the internet the other day where she kind of had jeans and a tank top and kind of a militaristic type thing. She was out shooting or something.
Oh, how Sarah Palin of her.
Yeah, but she physically looks the part. I mean, you can tell she's strong, fit, just an all around, very vibrant person. And of course, Kennedy at 70 is still that. You know, he's jacked. So you would have two very, in comparison with what we have now, younger candidates who are very physically fit, very mentally sharp. And that would be quite the ticket. I have a feeling it's very unlikely that Vivek would go with Kennedy because he's too aligned with Trump at this point. Yeah. I can't imagine that happening, but anything's possible in politics. As we know, they make strange bedfellows, but I'd have to say that's unlikely.
Yeah. I just did a podcast interview about media with Pulitzer-nominated journalist Rose Horowitz. It was a really fascinating interview, and she brought up an article from the New Yorker that was titled something like the extinction. The media was going extinct. Then basically news media, journalism in many ways, but really just media as a catch-all was going extinct. Do you think that's apt?
Extinct is a strong word at this time, but I got to say it's got to adapt. You know, one of the caveats to evolution is that it's not really the survival of the fittest. It is your ability to adapt to change. That's the species that succeeds. And right now, traditional media is being tested. Oddly enough, in my area of the past, I would have to say radio, for whatever reason, is still hanging in there. I think a lot of people like to listen to live talking on the radio. Talk radio is extremely big, whether it be sports or news or a commentary or what have you. So that's still hanging in there. TV news, local news is suffering. The chances that your local news is getting any viewers under 21 is extremely small.
Oh, yeah.
Very small. And national news has really taken a hit. I would say, led by cable news, which has been, the last 2 years has been decimated, and they did a good job of doing that to themselves.
Oh yeah, they basically they ruined their reputation with the American people with the way they handled politics and coronavirus closures.
Yes. So to answer your question, if I was cable news right now, I'd be very nervous. There was one time, the ratings leader was Fox, and I'm not advocating for them. I'm just plain truth. When they had O'Reilly at 8 o'clock and the rest of their lineup at that time, they were untouchable. They were getting millions of viewers in prime time. They survived getting rid of O'Reilly. And then they brought in Tucker Carlson, who at his height was just getting unbelievable numbers for them. There was one year where his 8 o'clock, quote unquote, boring commentary program at 8 o'clock was outdoing the NBA playoffs.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's
Yeah. Wow. Well, they got rid of him, and you can hear different stories about how well founded that was or not. But now they're not bouncing back. So I was listening to Megyn Kelly, and she said pretty much the same thing. They survived getting rid of her. They survived getting rid of O'Reilly. They're not bouncing back from Tucker.
Oh no, that was so poorly handled.
Yeah.
And his move over to Twitter really, which is what it was called, being more called when he did switch, really put a exclamation point on that. You know, it's just from the background of somebody like myself who has worked with media directly. Most of the major channels and newspapers over the last 25 years I've worked with. And something that I had noticed about 10 years ago, I started noticing the numbers of journalists, specifically journalists who worked in-house at places, as well as the number of freelance. It used to be over 6 figures, and it's now in the double digits. And the huge majority of them are freelancers, so they're not actually, committed or supported by any media. And I see that as a definite sign that there's an extinction going on, and the only survivors are going to be people who adapt to the way that people want information served to them these days.
Yep. And cable news is probably one of the first things that's going to go unless they do something quick. I think standard broadcast news still has hope, but they're going to have to get off these ideological spectrums because people are not tolerating that anymore. I mean, you know exactly what NBC is going to say about a certain thing. You know exactly what Fox is going to say about a certain thing. You don't even have to watch the programs to know what they're going to say. That can't continue. So, yeah, and what you're talking about, Tucker on X, doing some of the interviews and commentary that he has done, he's getting far more views than all the cable news networks combined.
Yeah.
So things are changing. Elon Musk is changing. I really like the transformative idea of Twitter becoming more than just a microblogging thing. It's it has aspects of YouTube. It has aspects of TikTok. It has aspects of a lot of different things, and news being really what drives it. Trending things are really what's driving it. Yeah. And the idea that YouTube and some of these other networks have had a drop off. A lot of really key commentators have made the move because there's been too much tinkering around with who gets driven in some of these platforms and who doesn't. Yeah. So that's really been a driving force in that, for the most part, unless you're really radical, you're not going to get tampered with too much on X.
Yeah, I agree with that. One of the benefits of having an owner, if you will, who's allowed to do what he thinks is right, is that you can survey the landscape and pick and choose and redevelop what is best on other your competitors' sites, and being able to incorporate all those aspects quickly and efficiently and roll them out without the BS that so many other social media platforms resort to. Has really worked in X's favor, and is going to be, I really see it as the future of the way that people get their, and it already is, but the way that people get their news really is going to continue to shift in the favor of platforms like X, and that really is because of the ability to make drastic changes quickly and efficiently. And you don't see that at most social media platforms because there's too many people involved in the decision making, which was always my biggest frustration as an agency owner, is that too many times I couldn't do the things I knew were possible because too many people disagreed with each other.
Correct.
CBS apparently fired and stole basically the notes of a very famous investigative journalist this week. She was investigating the Biden family. Did you hear about that?
Yes, and Herridge. Well, what's her name?
I think it's Catherine.
Catherine Herridge or something like that.
Yeah,
yes, I'm familiar. Yeah. I'm familiar with it. Yes.
Yeah,
I didn't understand that one.
Yeah, well,
Catherine Herridge, I believe it is.
Yeah. I think it stinks to high heaven. I mean, when did we start confiscating the notes of journalists on their own investigations, especially investigative journalists, especially CBS? Weren't they the ones who did 60 Minutes for such a long time?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know the story behind that, but I got to tell you that's not good. And there's something weird happened with one of the NBC investigators here about a year or two ago when there was that incident at the Pelosi house. And they didn't particularly like the way he presented that either. That's not the way it should happen. You shouldn't be filtering. You're not making a movie. You know, you're not creating characters. The news speaks for itself. You don't need to create a character that is Biden or a character that is Trump. These are real people, and they need to be presented as such accurately. That's what news is. They're not creating fictional stories, and they shouldn't be following a script.
Oh yeah, and I think that what you're highlighting reminds me of one of the reasons the media have become so distrusted by the American people is the American people could see what they were not reporting about Biden.
Yeah. And
that makes it hard to trust the source when the source is only saying what's pre-approved.
Yeah,
that's not news.
I mean, you know, there's still reporters out there that almost swear on a stack of Bibles that Joe Biden's fine.
Yeah, I've talked to a few of my liberal friends, and I'm like, stop, please stop.
Yeah.
I don't know who you're selling that story to, but it's not working with me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I remember when Reagan, you know, the knock on him for a long time was he was too old. And of course, he had the famous line during the '84 debate, which kind of took that off the table. He said, I promise there's people that want to make age an issue, but I promise I won't exploit my opponent's youth and inexperience. That line brought down the House, and it was a good line. But you got to keep in mind that Reagan, and I generally liked Reagan. Here again, being totally objective, if you go back and look at some of his news clips and some of his press conferences, he was not the same man in '87 as he was in '81. No, there was a fall off, and you know that's sometimes the natural progression of things. And of course, he was diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's and all these other things at a later time. But you got to keep in mind when he left office, the knock on him when he was too old. When he left office, he was younger than Joe Biden going in.
Wow. I liked Reagan. You know, do I like Reaganomics or some of the other things? But I liked him. He was he was an inspiring leader, and his ability as an orator was, you know, that's what Obama's real appeal was his bullshit ability. Yeah. And I like Obama as a speaker.
Sure. Oh, he's a great speaker. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Reagan was an interesting guy. His background is interesting. He gets called like a former actor, but he was actually quite involved in
It's not fair to call him just an actor because he was involved in politics and governmental things for decades. And of course, he became governor of California.
Yeah.
By the time he ran for president, to say, well, he's just an actor, it was not fair. I mean,
that was not fair. So what's going on with you? What you got some special episodes coming up? You know, what's in the pipeline?
And for whatever reason, I've gotten really popular with the RFK people. I just finished an interview the other day, which is going to be out. Someone who has known RFK for a long time is going to talk about him. And of course, we had the Holden interview. There's a lot of people that, for whatever reason, have associated me with that subject matter. So honestly, I've got so many requests that I can't manage them all. You know, we can't, and I never really could take them all, but now it's getting to the point where it's getting overwhelming. And I still have the publishers. I'm going to be interviewing a humor writer tomorrow. And then the following week, another actor and author is going to be on the program. So we got a good mix of creative types, showbiz types, and activist types. So I'm really happy about that. So yeah, that's good. That's all good. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got a great podcast, and the numbers show that. It's enjoyable to watch, and you've got a really great, diverse group of guests.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that makes your show really, you really are very fortunate in the caliber and the diversity of the guests that you have.
Yeah.
If people wanted to learn more about you or follow you, where would they go to find out more about Billy Dees?
Probably the easiest thing to do is just at Billy Dees on X, the former Twitter. That's kind of been my social media home for a long time. But if and as far as the podcast goes, you go to any platform and just type in Billy Dees podcast. I come right up. I'm on all of them as far as I know. And occasionally I find out that I'm one that I didn't even know about. I'll get an email from somebody say, I heard you on such and such a network. I'm like, what is that? And I have to find it. Oh yeah, I am on there. So that's that's awesome too. And then on social media the same way. If you just search Billy Dees on TikTok or the Billy Dees podcast on Facebook, I come up. Don't do a whole lot on Facebook. I've never really caught fire with Facebook and that whole meta ecosystem.
Yeah, I don't resonate there either.
I don't resonate there. So I would probably say Twitter, the new X, the former Twitter, is probably where to go. Thank you.
Oh, I love that, Billy. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Anytime.
Talking politics. If you guys want to see more Billy Dees and myself, join us on X on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock. We talk politics, culture, entertainment. And we have fun doing it. So come check us out and watch us live. If you want to see more of Citizen Journal, please go subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, what's wrong with you? This is where you learn the truth about important topics and how we can move forward. Please visit shamanisis.com to learn more about the work that I do. And thank you so much to so many people who ordered Memory Mansion. I've received some wonderful notes and messages and social media from people about the book. You guys helped make it a #1 bestseller, and for that I'm truly grateful. So thank you so much. You guys have an amazing week, and we'll be back with more pretty soon. Anyway, bye.